Most people do not live to be free. They live to be accepted. From the moment we first draw breath, we are quietly trained to perform, to please, to align, to belong. We are taught that survival depends not on who we are, but on who others believe we are. As children, approval comes as warmth, a smile, a nod, a gentle hand. But as we grow, it becomes currency. It buys us opportunity, belonging, and love. And like all currencies, it can be manipulated, withheld, or inflated until our entire sense of worth depends on it. Nietzsche once wrote that the surest way to corrupt a soul is to teach it to value the opinion of others more than the truth within itself. He saw this not as mere vanity, but as spiritual decay, a slow descent into dependence on the herd. The modern world has perfected this dependence. We wear masks not to deceive others, but to survive them. In a world built on exposure, where every opinion can be measured, counted, and ranked, approval has become our invisible god. Its temples are not in stone, but in screens. Its rituals are performed through likes, shares, and the constant refreshing of validation. The tragedy is not that we seek connection. It is that we have mistaken approval for connection, applause for meaning. We confuse being seen with being understood. We trade authenticity for acceptance, not realizing that every trade takes something irreplaceable, the quiet voice of the self. In Nietzsche's time, the herd was the church, the nation, the moral crowd. Today, it is the algorithmic collective, a new mob with digital faces and endless opinions. We no longer fear physical exile, but psychological invisibility. We dread being ignored more than being wrong. The more we chase approval, the less we see. Our choices, our beliefs, our ambitions, all bend subtly toward what will be accepted, what will be liked. And yet, in this endless performance, the truth of who we are begins to fade like a forgotten echo. There comes a moment, silent and terrifying, when we realize that everything we've become was built not from freedom, but from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of silence, fear of not being enough in the eyes of others. And in that moment, if we are brave enough to face it, we might ask the question that marks the beginning of awakening. What remains of us when we stop performing for others? Human beings have always feared isolation more than death. To be alone, to stand outside the circle, was once a literal death sentence. In the vast prehistoric wilderness, safety meant belonging. The tribe was warmth, food, protection, identity. The lone wanderer was food for wolves. From these ancient fears, Nietzsche said, was born the herd instinct, a deep, almost biological compulsion to conform, to seek safety not in truth, but in numbers. Madness, he wrote, is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages, it is the rule. He saw this instinct as the silent tyrant of human history, the invisible force that makes people kneel when they should stand, agree when they should question, and obey when they should think. The herd does not demand reason. It demands unity. And unity, Nietzsche observed, is almost always achieved through suppression, the silencing of the different, the strange, the inconvenient. To disagree with the herd is to risk being branded as dangerous, immoral, or insane. The individual is not rewarded for seeing clearly, but for seeing like everyone else. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche described how entire moral systems are built from this instinct. We call something good not because it is true or noble, but because it preserves the collective order. Evil, on the other hand, is often what threatens that order, even if it happens to be right. The herd does not care for truth. It cares for comfort, for cohesion, for the illusion of safety. This was not simply a critique of his century. It was a diagnosis of the human condition itself. Evolutionary psychology now affirms what Nietzsche sensed intuitively. The human brain is wired for conformity. Mirror neurons, social cues, and emotional contagion all keep us attuned to the moods and opinions of those around us. The mind evolved not as an instrument of truth, but as a tool for belonging. And though the dangers of the wild are gone, the instinct remains. We are still tribes, only our rituals have changed. Instead of fires, we gather around screens. Instead of tattoos and totems, we wear brands and hashtags. Instead of exile into the forest, we face cancellation, ridicule, or digital invisibility. The illusion of individuality is one of the great myths of the modern age. We tell ourselves we are free thinkers, yet our opinions are shaped by trends, by algorithms designed to feed us what the collective already approves of. Our politics, our identities, even our outrage, all circulate through the same predictable loops of reinforcement. Every thought is measured against the invisible consensus of the crowd. Nietzsche foresaw this with haunting precision. He warned that societies obsessed with equality and mass opinion would slowly suffocate the exceptional, the creative, and the courageous. The higher man, he wrote, is an accident of the herd's indifference. In other words, individuality does not thrive in the warmth of approval. It grows only in resistance to it. The herd does not ask you to think, it asks you to mirror. And every time you agree without understanding, imitate without questioning, or remain silent to avoid disapproval, you strengthen the walls of your own cage. To seek truth, Nietzsche believed, one must first betray the herd. Not through rebellion for its own sake, but through the courage to see without the filter of collective opinion. The act of independent thought, genuine, unapproved thought, is one of the rarest and most dangerous revolutions a person can commit. We inherit the instinct to belong, but we must choose the strength to stand alone. For only when one steps outside the comforting noise of the herd does the world, at last, begin to sound clear. There is a moment in every life when the crowd's applause begins to sound hollow. When the compliments, the smiles, the reassurances, all the small tokens of approval that once felt like sunlight start to lose their warmth. It is in that moment that something ancient stirs within us. A quiet, unsettling whisper that says, "This is not who I am." Nietzsche called the one who listens to that whisper a free spirit. Not a rebel for rebellion's sake, but a person who begins to see beyond the veil of collective comfort. The birth of the free spirit is not a grand revolution. It is an inner earthquake. It begins in solitude, in discomfort, in the unbearable silence that follows the withdrawal of validation. For most, that silence feels like death. Approval has long served as the oxygen of identity. When it disappears, the self gasps for air. But what dies in that silence is not the true self. It is the false one, the one built entirely from reflections in other people's eyes. The collapse of approval is not destruction, it is purification. Nietzsche described this process as self-overcoming, the art of dismantling the inner architecture of dependence. The free spirit must tear down everything within that was constructed to please, to fit, to belong. This is not an act of arrogance, but of honesty. For to live authentically, one must first face the terrifying question, who am I when no one is watching? Carl Jung would later echo this idea in his concept of individuation, the journey of integrating the shadow, the unapproved parts of ourselves that the herd taught us to hide. Individuation, like Nietzsche's self-overcoming, is a confrontation with everything society told us to fear, our contradictions, our instincts, our capacity for both creation and destruction. The path toward authenticity requires walking straight through the wilderness of the psyche, alone, without the compass of public opinion. Modern psychology, too, recognizes the cost of conformity. Studies show that people who chronically seek approval experience higher anxiety, depression, and a weaker sense of identity. The self that constantly adapts to the expectations of others becomes fluid, unstable, hollow. The free spirit, on the other hand, gains resilience through rejection. Each act of nonconformity strengthens the inner core, like a muscle torn and rebuilt through strain. To stop living for approval is to be exiled from the comfort of the collective. But this exile is sacred. It is the space where clarity begins. When the noise fades, when every external opinion dissolves into silence, what remains is the raw voice of one's own consciousness, unfamiliar at first, yet unmistakably true. Nietzsche wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." The birth of the free spirit is precisely this, the moment when one accepts that to see clearly is to stand alone. Not above others, but apart from their illusions. It is not a rejection of humanity, but a reconciliation with one's own humanity, unfiltered, untamed, and therefore real. There is immense pain in this awakening. To detach from approval is to feel invisible for the first time. But that invisibility is freedom. For once you no longer need to be seen, you begin to see everything. The masks of the herd fall away. You recognize how much of human behavior is simply fear dressed as morality, imitation disguised as conviction. The free spirit is not born through comfort, but through confrontation, a breaking, a loss, a rediscovery. It is the beginning of a deeper life, one measured not by applause, but by alignment with truth. And though the path is lonely, it is also luminous. For the first time, the light guiding you forward does not come from others. It comes from within. The world no longer asks what is true. It asks what is approved. Every opinion, every image, every identity is filtered through a silent algorithm of consensus, a vast digital mirror reflecting not who we are, but who we are allowed to be. In the past, approval was a social phenomenon. It existed within the tribe, the community, the church. It was local, human, intimate. Today, it is systemic. It is coded into the invisible architecture of the modern world. The platforms we use, the corporations we support, the governments we elect. We no longer seek approval from individuals. We seek it from the machine, from the system itself. Nietzsche warned of a coming age when God would be dead, not in the literal sense, but in the moral one, when the great moral anchor of society would collapse, leaving humanity to create its own meaning. Yet in the vacuum of divine judgment, something else emerged to take its place. The collective gaze, the algorithmic God. In this new religion, belief is replaced by engagement. Virtue is quantified in metrics. Worth is measured not in the depth of thought, but in the reach of visibility. The modern individual is no longer judged by conscience, but by numbers, likes, followers, impressions. In Nietzsche's time, people feared divine damnation. Now they fear digital irrelevance. This system feeds not on truth, but on attention. The more one conforms to its expectations, the more visible one becomes. Outrage, conformity, emotional spectacle, these are its sacraments. And like any faith, it punishes heresy. The price of nonconformity is invisibility, exile from the shared illusion of belonging. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han called it the society of transparency. A world where everything must be seen, measured, and validated. Privacy is no longer virtue, but suspicion. Silence, once the language of depth, is now mistaken for weakness. The pressure to reveal, to perform, to align, creates a new kind of tyranny, one where we willingly surrender our individuality in exchange for approval's fleeting comfort. Corporations have mastered this hunger. They no longer sell products, they sell identities. Each purchase, each post, each click is an act of self-definition within the marketplace of belonging. The system whispers, be yourself, but only in the ways that can be monetized. Authenticity itself becomes a brand, and rebellion becomes a marketing strategy. The very desire to be different is absorbed and repackaged as another product for the herd. Even politics has become theater for approval. Public opinion has replaced principle. Ideologies no longer arise from conviction, but from data-driven persuasion. Candidates are sculpted by focus groups. Morality is tested through polling. Every decision, every stance, is measured not by truth or justice, but by its potential to please the crowd. In this way, democracy risks mutating into a marketplace of flattery, where leaders reflect the people's desires rather than challenge them. This is Nietzsche's prophecy realized in digital form. When he declared, God is dead, he feared that humanity, unable to face the void of meaning, would replace faith with idols. Today, those idols are quantified, updated in real time, and worshipped through screens. The sacred has not vanished. It has been reprogrammed. The tragedy is subtle but immense. The more we conform to this system of approval, the more it shapes our sense of what is real. If a thought receives no engagement, we treat it as unworthy. If an act of goodness goes unseen, we doubt its value. The algorithm becomes the new moral compass, silently dictating what should be noticed and what should be ignored. And so, In our pursuit of universal approval, we have created a world of universal imitation. The same gestures, the same opinions, the same aesthetics circulate endlessly, an echo chamber masquerading as connection. We scroll through a hall of mirrors, mistaking reflections for relationships, recognition for reality. Nietzsche once envisioned the Übermensch, the higher individual who creates his own values in the absence of divine authority. But instead of rising to that challenge, humanity has knelt before a new deity, not one of spirit, but of data. We have traded the silence of faith for the noise of validation. The result is a civilization that appears more connected than ever, yet feels profoundly empty. Every image seeks affirmation, every voice demands applause. We have become a species terrified of indifference, addicted to being seen, yet incapable of truly seeing. In this mirror of modernity, the truth has been replaced by approval. And the tragedy is not that we cannot tell the difference, but that, increasingly, we no longer care to. There comes a point when the search for approval burns itself out. When the applause, the likes, the validation that once felt intoxicating begin to sound like static. It is not that the world stops speaking, it's that you stop needing to listen. This is the moment Nietzsche called amor fati, the love of one's fate. The acceptance, not of comfort or reward, but of reality as it is. The person who reaches this point no longer chases admiration or fears rejection. They see both as instruments of control, tools the world uses to keep the self enslaved. To stop seeking approval is to remove the lens that distorts perception. Suddenly, what once felt urgent becomes trivial. The noise of the crowd fades into background hum. You begin to see how every opinion, every criticism, every compliment is nothing more than a reflection of another person's conditioning. The praise of the herd says nothing about your worth, only about its preferences. When this realization takes hold, clarity emerges. You start to notice the architecture of manipulation that once guided your choices, the subtle ways society weaponizes belonging. Every advertisement, every headline, every movement in culture whispers the same command: agree, comply, conform. But once you no longer crave approval, you can see the machinery for what it is: a mechanism designed to produce obedience. Nietzsche understood this as the threshold between the human and the free spirit. The one who still depends on approval is chained to the moods of others. The one who transcends it becomes untouchable. They are no longer governed by shame or praise, those two levers that steer most lives. They act not to please, but because their actions are aligned with inner truth. This freedom carries an unexpected stillness. In solitude, the mind ceases its endless rehearsals for acceptance. The self no longer performs. What remains is silence, vast, unsettling, and alive. It is in this silence that a person finally meets themselves. The image built from mirrors collapses, and what stands there, stripped of all decoration, is something terrifyingly real. But this clarity does not come cheaply. It requires enduring misunderstanding, even hostility. For the moment one stops depending on approval, they begin to unsettle those who still do. The free individual reveals the fragility of the collective illusion. They expose how most people's convictions are masks for fear. In a world addicted to validation, indifference to judgment looks like rebellion. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." Yet he also suggested that those who succeed in this struggle discover a strength the tribe can never understand. They see the world with unclouded eyes. They recognize that truth has never been a matter of consensus. Amor fati is not passive acceptance, it is active affirmation. It is the strength to say yes to existence, to every joy and every loss, without needing anyone's approval to justify it. When you stop trying to prove your worth, life ceases to be a performance and becomes a participation in reality itself. There is a profound peace in this surrender. The anxiety of impression, the fear of rejection, the hunger for acknowledgement, all dissolve. What replaces them is not arrogance, but clarity. You begin to understand that freedom is not the absence of judgment, but the indifference to it. And with that indifference comes power. For the one who cannot be manipulated by praise or shame cannot be controlled at all. They walk through the world untethered, no longer a reflection of others, but a mirror through which others must see themselves. In this clarity, the world looks the same, but feels utterly different. You see its illusions, its games, its endless search for approval, and you realize that none of it can touch you anymore. The fog has lifted. What remains is truth, raw, silent, and beautifully indifferent. Freedom from approval is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a new kind of life. Once the illusions fall away, what remains is a quieter, deeper challenge. How to exist among others without becoming them again. How to walk back into the world of masks and still remain unmasked within. Nietzsche believed that after one overcomes the herd, they must learn to return to it, not as a follower, but as a creator. This is the essence of the Übermensch, the one who no longer reacts to the world, but gives it new meaning. To live authentically is not to retreat from humanity, but to rise above its hypnosis and act from one's own center. When a person no longer depends on approval, their relationship with society transforms. They no longer see themselves as a participant in a performance, but as an observer and a builder. They are no longer seeking identity through imitation, but shaping identity through creation. Their values are not inherited, they are forged. Their morality is not prescribed, it is discovered. This does not make them detached or cold. In truth, it makes them more capable of love. For when you no longer need others to affirm your worth, you can finally see them as they are, not as mirrors, but as beings struggling within their own illusions. You begin to understand that compassion is not approval, it is understanding without control. Living authentically in a world of masks means walking among illusions without wearing one. It means speaking truth without arrogance, creating beauty without vanity, and helping others without needing recognition. The free individual acts not because the world demands it, but because their nature compels it. This is what Nietzsche meant when he said, "Become who you are." It is not a call to invent yourself from nothing, but to strip away everything false until what remains is unmistakably real. Authenticity is not found through addition, but through subtraction, through the relentless removal of what is borrowed, performative, or afraid. Modern life will always pull you back toward the performance. The noise of the crowd will tempt you to conform, to return to the comfort of approval. But once you've seen the machinery of manipulation, you cannot unsee it. You recognize the masks for what they are, survival tools, not identities. You can wear them when necessary, but they no longer define you. In this way, clarity is not isolation. It is strength, the kind that stands quietly amid chaos and remains untouched. To live authentically is not to escape the world, but to move through it with integrity intact. You become a mirror that reflects without distortion, a presence that cannot be easily bent by public opinion or cultural tide. When you stop seeking approval, you stop being a product of the world, and start becoming its author. You write your own meaning. You define your own values. And your existence becomes an act of creation, not for applause, not for validation, but for truth itself. The world may never fully understand this kind of freedom, but in a time when everyone is desperate to be seen, perhaps the rarest and most powerful act left is simply to be unseen, unapproved, yet entirely whole. The crowd disperses. The lights dim. The applause, that familiar rush of validation, fades into memory. And in the quiet that follows, something shifts. The silence feels different now, almost sacred. It is not emptiness, it is space. The kind of space where truth can finally breathe. When one stops living for approval, the world doesn't change, but the lens through which it is seen does. The noise of opinions, once deafening, becomes background static. The race for recognition loses its urgency. You begin to notice how frantic it all is. The endless gestures for attention, the desperation to be seen, liked, remembered. It is a theater without an ending, sustained only by the fear of irrelevance. And yet, in this silence, there is peace. The kind that does not depend on applause, or audience, or affirmation. You realize that freedom was never about escaping the world, but about no longer being owned by it. You can walk among the noise without absorbing it, act without pretending, create without performing. This is the final awakening, not grand, not dramatic, but profoundly quiet. It is the moment the self no longer seeks reflection in other eyes. The moment you finally become real. Because clarity does not come when others see you. It comes when you finally see yourself.